In the early hours of September 19, 1980, the Titan II nuclear missile complex outside Damascus, Arkansas, was operating exactly as designed. The missile sat sealed inside its underground silo, fueled, armed, and ready. Above ground, the surrounding farmland was quiet. Below ground, one of the most powerful weapons ever built waited in silence. What triggered the disaster was not sabotage, not enemy action, not mechanical failure in the missile itself. It was a dropped tool. That night, a two-man U.S. Air Force propellant transfer system team was sent into the silo to perform routine maintenance. Their task was simple and had been done many times before. Check pressure levels inside the missile's fuel tanks. The Titan II used liquid propellants, unlike modern solid fuel missiles. Its fuel, Aerozine 50, and oxidizer, nitrogen tetroxide, were highly toxic, corrosive, and volatile. A leak could be deadly. A rupture could be catastrophic. Because of this danger, procedures were strict. They were also flawed. Inside the silo, the technicians worked in confined space, dozens of feet below ground, surrounded by steel, concrete, and a missile carrying a 9-megaton nuclear warhead. During the procedure, one of the men used a large socket wrench to remove a pressure cap. The wrench was heavy. It should have been tethered. It wasn't. At around 6:30 p.m., the wrench slipped from the technician's hand. It fell. The socket dropped down the silo shaft, bouncing off the missile's skin before striking the thin metal wall of the first-stage fuel tank. The tank was not armored. It was never meant to be struck. The impact tore a hole in it. Fuel began to pour out. Aerozine 50 is not just flammable. It is toxic enough to kill in minutes if inhaled. It reacts violently with nitrogen tetroxide, and it spreads quickly in enclosed spaces. As the fuel sprayed into the silo, alarms went off. The technicians evacuated immediately, reporting the leak. The situation escalated fast. The Titan II missile was still fully fueled. As propellant drained from the damaged tank, pressure dropped, and the missile's internal structure began to destabilize. At the same time, fuel vapor filled the silo. Any ignition source, a spark, static discharge, electrical fault, could trigger an explosion. The Air Force sealed off the area. Local authorities were notified. Residents near the site were evacuated. Emergency response teams arrived, but there was no clear playbook for what was unfolding. A leaking intercontinental ballistic missile had never happened like this before. Inside the silo, conditions worsened. Fuel continued to leak for hours. The vapor cloud grew. Sensors failed as corrosive chemicals ate into equipment. The missile, designed to be vertical and pressurized, was now structurally compromised. Engineers debated what to do. Some believed the missile should be vented. Others feared entering the silo would trigger ignition. The warhead remained intact, but its safety depended on systems that were now surrounded by chaos. Late that night, a decision was made to send a team back inside. 2 men volunteered. They entered the silo wearing protective gear, knowing the risks. Their mission was to assess the situation and attempt to stabilize pressure levels. Inside, visibility was poor. The air was saturated with toxic vapor. Instruments were unreliable. They did not get far. Shortly after 3 a.m. on September 19, the silo exploded. The blast was massive. The force blew the 740-ton silo door off its hinges and hurled it hundreds of feet into the air. Concrete shattered, steel twisted. The missile was destroyed. The nuclear warhead was violently ejected from the silo, thrown clear by the explosion. One Air Force serviceman, Senior Airman David Livingston, was killed instantly. Others were seriously injured. The surrounding area was devastated by debris. Miraculously, there was no nuclear detonation. The warhead's safety mechanisms worked. Despite the violence, the nuclear core did not arm or explode. It landed nearby, damaged but intact. Radiation was not released in significant quantities. The worst-case scenario, an accidental nuclear explosion on U.S. soil, was narrowly avoided. The cause of the blast was not the warhead, it was the fuel. The leaking Aerozine-50 eventually mixed with nitrogen tetroxide in the confined space, creating a massive chemical explosion. The missile itself became the bomb. In the aftermath, the Air Force launched an investigation. The findings were deeply unsettling. The Titan II missile system, though powerful, was dangerously fragile. A single puncture to its fuel tank could lead to catastrophic failure. Maintenance procedures relied on human precision in an environment where a single mistake could be fatal. The dropped tool was not a freak accident, it was a foreseeable one. The tool was heavy, the workspace was cramped, tethering tools was not universally enforced, the missile's skin was thin, the consequences of impact were known but accepted as unlikely. Damascus proved how thin that margin was. The accident exposed a larger truth about Cold War nuclear strategy. These weapons were designed for deterrence, but they were maintained by ordinary people under imperfect conditions. Human error was not an anomaly, it was inevitable. After the explosion, the Titan II program was effectively doomed. Although the missiles remained in service briefly, the Damascus accident accelerated their retirement. By 1987, all Titan II missiles had been decommissioned. Solid fuel systems, safer and more stable, replaced them. For years, details of the accident were downplayed. The public was told little. Only later did the full story emerge. How close the United States came to detonating a nuclear warhead because of a maintenance error measured in seconds. The Damascus explosion did not change history in a dramatic, visible way. It changed it by not becoming something worse. It showed that nuclear disaster does not always arrive with warning sirens or enemy missiles. Sometimes it begins with routine maintenance, a tired hand, and a tool falling farther than it should. A 9-megaton weapon was rendered uncontrollable by gravity. One man died. A town was evacuated, a missile was destroyed, and the world moved on, largely unaware of how close it had come to learning, in the most violent way possible, that the greatest threat to nuclear safety was not war, but the systems built to prepare for it.